this child who like asks for sweets and begs for sweets and sneaks sweets, and then the time that you do serve sweets, they just could like shovel it in as much as they can eat because they have a scarcity mindset. This is take 2 because I just recorded this entire video and it had no sound because I plugged in the wrong microphone. Anyways, so today we are going to be covering how to help your kids have a healthy relationship with sweets. This is a quick guide based on an Instagram post that I just shared today that's getting a lot of awesome discussion in the comment section. So I wanted to come on here and just kind of explain it all in my own words verbally in case you learn better verbally, or in case you're on the podcast or missed the Instagram post, or want to send this to somebody who needs like a more in-depth explanation, for example, a partner or a grandparent or a nanny or a caregiver of any sort. This is a really good thing to send them to have like a little bit of a lesson on how to help kids have a healthy relationship with sweets. If you're on video, you're going to see me checking my notes. If you're on podcast, you won't see me, but I'm so glad you're here anyways. But this still applies to you because yeah, this is really awesome content that is going to help you, or may help you. You might already be doing this, but it may help you reframe the way that you're approaching sweets with your kids, especially if you're worried that they're obsessed with sweets or they're sneaking sweets or that they have like a hyper fixation on sweets. So step number 1, keep the language neutral around food. So this means avoiding words like cheat day, treat, guilty pleasure, that food is good for you, that food is bad for you. Any word that is like morally charged or is associating morality with food is something that we want to avoid when we're talking about sweets with our kids. And the reason being is because in reality, food is just food. There's no moral value to it. You're not a good person or a bad person because of the way that you eat, and we don't want our kids to get that message too, because they get bombarded all day long with messages of morality, of like good or bad, or we teach them like, you know, not like hitting your brother is bad or sharing is good, or we want to help them become a good person. And so when we associate morality with food, of course that they're going to want to seek out the things that are good, and they're going to feel conflicted about the things that are bad. So if we say like, oh, sugar is bad for you, and then they have access to candy later, well, the fact of the matter is that for most people, sugar tastes good. We as humans are wired to enjoy the taste of sugar. So if your child gets the message that sugar is bad and then now they're enjoying sugar, that's really conflicting. Like, how should I feel if I want to be a good person, but mom said that sugar is bad, but I really like this lollipop and now I don't even know how to feel because I don't want to be bad, but I really like this. Does that mean I'm a bad person? And we don't want our tiny little humans to have such big feelings around food. We want to help them view food as morally neutral. And this is also really useful for adults too. So if you are working in your kiddo with having a healthy relationship with food, but you're also working on yourself too, try to adjust the way that you talk about food, even the way that you think about food or your internal dialogue about food. See if you can just use descriptor words or neutral words. So if instead of saying this is a special treat, say we're gonna have ice cream and it's really cold and creamy and I like the way it tastes and I especially like the chocolate chips inside. So you've told them that you enjoy the food because you do. And then you've used some neutral descriptor words like cold and creamy rather than like, this is a special treat we're having after dinner tonight. So the difference between those two, the way that we talk about food in those two instances is huge. And the way we talk about food and our attitude around food is the way our child is going to view food, is the attitude that they're going to have around food. So if we start talking about food as morally charged and some food is good and some food is bad, that's the attitude that they're going to have, even though to us it might just seem like a small thing, like using the word treat is a small thing, but it can have big implications down the road. And we also, like in today's diet culture world, there's a lot of food shaming happening on social media, in schools, and I for one, would not want my child to go to school and tell another kid that's bad for you to their lunch, because that's totally a shaming talk. And I think that's a form of bullying. And I don't want my daughter to do that, even if unintentional, because that would make that other kid feel really bad. And as adults, that, food shaming comes into play is a huge thing on social media, and makes people feel guilty about eating food, when in reality we don't know anything about their life circumstances other than the food that they're eating. And so talking about food in a neutral way also helps to reduce that and reduce the likelihood of your child growing into an adult or an older child who would shame somebody else for the food that they're eating. Next, serve sweets with the meal, not after. This is important, and something that I actually find grandparents struggle a lot with. Usually I see parents be very amenable to this, and grandparents struggle with this because we, at least my generation, was raised that dessert was served after the meal, and oftentimes it was only served if you ate your vegetables or if you ate some component or some amount of your meal. So instead, what I recommend is you as the parent decide what's on the menu for the night. If it includes sweets, great. If it doesn't include sweets, also great. You decide what's being served for dinner, for snacks, breakfast, lunch, whatever. And if there are sweets being served, if it's a cookie or a cake or candy or berries and cream, whatever, serve it on the plate with the rest of the food. We want to send the message that this food is just like the rest of your food. Food is just food, including food that tastes sweets. It's all just food. I have chosen to serve this along with the other foods on your plate that I've also chosen to serve. And anything that's on your plate, you can eat as much of it as you'd like because it's all equal. So that's the message we want our kids to get. You might be wondering, well, okay, I don't think food is equal because some food does some stuff for our body and some food does other stuff for our body. That is true, that foods take different action on our body. Sugar has a different action than fat, than protein, etc. Meat does something for our body while cake does other things for our body. But while we're working on shaping our child's relationship with food, we don't need to worry about those things. Important foundation is healthy relationship with food. Once we get there and your kiddo gets a little older, then we can start talking about the nutrition inside food and the things that it can do for our bodies. But primary focus, priority is a healthy relationship with food before we start diving into the science of nutrition and how it affects our bodies. So, serving dessert on the plate with the rest of the food. I did get a question on Instagram, well, what about ice cream because it melts? I serve ice cream after. I do. And that's just for a practical reason, is because it's going to melt. If my child, dinner can take 30 minutes. And if my child is going to sit there with a bowl of ice cream and go back and forth between her ice cream and her broccoli, the ice cream is going to melt. So, or a popsicle, for example. So I do serve meltable things after, but I implement all the strategies I talk about in this video, and we support my daughter in having a healthy relationship with food. I believe she has a very healthy view of sweets. And so if we serve ice cream after dinner instead of with dinner some nights, that's not going to unravel it. Just like if you go out to a restaurant and you order a cookie after your pizza, that's not going to unravel their healthy relationship with sweets, as long as they have that structure elsewhere in their life and it's consistently being implemented. So don't stress about stuff like that, because we want to look at the big picture here, not the small nitty-gritty detail of exactly what time is ice cream being served. We want to look at overall, is dessert being served on the plate with the rest of the meal to show them that it's equal. Okay, next, offer multiple servings. Offer unlimited servings. This is probably the most challenging thing for parents. Bar none, it's really hard. The serving sweets with the meal I see is harder with grandparents. This one I see it being harder with parents. So offering multiple or unlimited servings is very hard, especially if you yourself are struggling or have struggled with eating disorders, disordered eating, some sort of fat phobia, weight, you have a bias against people in larger bodies, you have a fear of sugar, you've been fed all these diet culture mentality that sugar is bad for you, it's going to make you unhealthy, dessert is going to make you unhealthy, etc. So if you are in that camp, I just want you to be prepared that this is hard. None of this is easy, but this is probably the hardest thing. So take a deep breath with me right now. Get yourself in a good mental headspace and prepare yourself for the first time that you implement this. Don't do it on like a night that you're super stressed if you've never done this before. So serving multiple servings or unlimited servings is so important because we don't want our kids to be in the restriction or scarcity mindset. We want our child to know that they can eat their fill of all the different foods that are served and nothing is going to be restricted, because if we don't restrict their broccoli, we happily serve them multiple servings of broccoli or salmon, but we do restrict their cake, you are sending them the message that the cake is bad, either bad for you, depending on how you talk about it, or that this is exciting and special and you only get a little bit, but you can have the rest of this boring stuff as much as you want, but you only get a little bit of cake or cupcakes or whatever. So even if you have neutral food language and even if you serve dessert on the plate, but you don't offer multiple servings, or you limit them to one serving, or you don't offer unlimited servings, you're still going to be creating this sugar obsession and restriction mindset. So this is so important. Do not skimp on this, because these strategies will not work if you limit your child's volume of sweet foods when you serve it. It is what it is. So I do also recommend to offer unlimited servings when you can. I know it's not always practical. Sweet foods can be really expensive depending on the type of dessert that you're serving, or like you go to a restaurant and you order something and you've paid the bill and you're ready to go and your child asks for more at the very end. Like, it's not practical to be like, oh, okay, we don't have to go home, it's not bedtime, you can stay here and order another slice of chocolate cake and I'll open up another tab for you. Like, that's not practical in that situation. But if you have an entire birthday cake at home and each person has had a piece in the family and there's plenty of cake, that's a situation where it's practical to let them eat their fill, let them have multiple servings. We want to show them that just like they have multiple servings of broccoli and access to their vegetables as much as they would like, they also have access to the sweet foods as much as they would like. A warning, if you are implementing this for the first time, and especially if your kiddo is a little bit older, because you might be wondering like, Dr. Arnold, I'm gonna try this, my kid's gonna eat like 8 brownies. Yeah, they probably will, especially if you've been restricting them a lot. So that's why I said you got to mentally prepare yourself to be calm when they continually ask for more. So yeah, they're going to test the boundaries. You have switched the boundaries, you've changed the rules in the house, and they are going to test and poke and prod to make sure that you're actually good with the new boundary that you have put in place, which is I choose when something is served and you choose how much of it you're going to eat, even if it's a sweet food. That's the new boundary you put in place, and they are going to test you on that, especially if this is new, especially if it's an older child. If you are raising an infant right now and you are just learning about how to approach sweets with them in the future, you probably won't have as much pushback because you're not like having to dismantle any preconceived notions about sweets or any diet culture ideas that they have already. So it's a little bit easier for you. But if you have a toddler and up and you're trying to change their view of sweets, it's going to be more challenging and there's going to be more pushback. But I also guarantee you that one day they're going to be eating and not finish their dessert and leave half of it on the plate and eat some extra veggies. And you're going to be shocked and you're going to internally do a little happy dance, but you don't want to freak out because we want them to have a neutral view of sweets and food. But inside, you're going to be so happy and so relieved that this has happened. You will get there. You will have wins. It just takes a long time depending on the level of sweet obsession that your kiddo has. So prepare yourself. The hardest part, probably also the most important part of this video too. Next, serve sweets regularly. So all of these strategies are not going to be effective if you're only serving sweets twice a month. Next is serve sweets regularly. So you want sweets to be in your regular rotation. The goal with this is to make your child not feel like, you don't want them to feel like that sweets are a rarity, that it's a scarce thing in your house for sweets to be served, because then you're going to put them into that scarcity mindset. And when someone is in a scarcity mindset and they're exposed to the thing that they really want, they're going to try to take a lot of it or eat a lot of it. And you're going to create this child who like asks for sweets and begs for sweets and sneaks sweets. And then the time that you do serve sweets, they just like shovel it in as much as they can eat because they have a scarcity mindset. So we want our kiddos to feel comfortable that sweets are served on such a regular basis in our home that they don't need to sneak them, that they don't need to beg for them because it's going to happen anyway. They need to feel comfortable and confident that this is part of the routine and it will happen. And then you're going to have less of that scarcity mindset with your kiddo. So oftentimes if I hear a parent that says that their kiddo is struggling with sneaking sweets, usually my response is that they need to serve sweets more often. So I won't give you a number like you should serve sweets this often because it depends on your child and your family. So for me, we serve sweets anywhere from 1 to 3 times in our house. It's usually a dessert after dinner. Sometimes it flexes on, like on the weekends. I know they get sweet stuffs at daycare too, so that's not saying they only get sweet things like 1 time a week. They get sweet stuff at daycare too, but at dinner time, because they eat their lunch and snack at school. At dinner time, we get sweets 1 to 3 times per week. Occasionally we'll do something sweet for breakfast, like with donuts or syrup or whatever. But for a child who is obsessed with sweets or sneaking sweets or has a hyper focus on sweets, you may need to serve it more. That doesn't mean that forever you need to be serving sweets every day, but maybe serving sweets every day is a good bridge to help your child like take a deep breath and relax and know that sweets are part of their everyday routine and they don't have to freak out when they don't get it because it'll come again soon. So you may need to adjust the frequency that you serve sweets. At one point I noticed my daughter was starting to get like hyper focused on eating sweets, and so I started serving them to her more. And then when she realized it was a regular part of our routine, kept it like that for a little while and dialed it back a little bit and she did fine. So it's really kind of like a moving target. But sneaking sweets is usually a red flag that you need to serve them more. So I know I get that question a lot on Instagram. All right, next is avoiding food rewards. This is something that myself and a lot of the big pediatric nutrition accounts talk about a lot. But when we use a food to reward a child for their behavior, we're associating morality with that food. We say, you did a good thing, you get this food. You don't do a good thing or you're bad, you don't get this food. So even if we're using neutral language around food and we're using food to reward our kids, now we're doing that connection of food with morality there. So I highly recommend not using foods as any rewards and not withholding food as a punishment. So like you're being bad, we're not doing dessert tonight, or what have you. You as a parent decide what is served, and that should be independent of your child's behavior. It should not be a consequence or reward of their behavior, because if it is, then you're going to be associating food with morality and creating all of the issues that we talked about in the food language section. So a question I get is like, well, what about potty training rewards? I don't recommend using M&M's, chocolate chips, whatever, as a potty training reward. Not to mention that M&M's are a choking hazard for children under 4 anyways. But I don't recommend it, because then we're telling them that food has moral value, and if they do something good, they earn the food. And that really creates an adult who rewards themselves with food as they get older, rather than having other like emotional coping mechanisms for doing something good or not. Or maybe we have an adult that restricts food if they don't do something good. You know, associating food with morality can create a whole bunch of disordered eating behaviors. That being said, if you implement all of these strategies, and the one exception is that you gave your kid M&Ms for potty training, are you gonna unravel everything? No. You're not gonna unravel everything that you've done to help your kid having a healthy relationship with food. Not using food as a reward is one step in that, and if overall you avoid food rewards, but maybe you use M&Ms for potty training, you're probably not gonna ruin their relationship with sweets. You might have some food morality dismantling to do later on, but it's not gonna ruin everything. But it's also not something I recommend. So there's some middle ground for you to ponder. Okay, next, I have 2 pieces of advice for parents who are choosing to embark on this journey to help their kids have a healthy relationship with food. One is examine your own relationship with sweets. Oftentimes I find that helping your kid have a healthy relationship with sweets, serving them dessert more regularly, serving the sweets on the plate, allowing unlimited servings. I find these things are the most challenging with parents who are struggling with body image themselves, struggling with diet culture mentality that they have grown up with, struggling with fat phobia, struggling with eating disorders, disordered eating. All of those things can make it really hard to implement this with your kids. So I encourage you to examine your own relationship with food, examine the way that you apply these things to yourself, work on applying all of these strategies to yourself, because you don't want to like serve your kid a piece of cake on their plate and then you don't have any cake on your plate, because your kid's gonna ask you, why don't you have any cake on your plate? And it's one thing if you say, I don't like that cake, fine. But if you're never having sweets on your plate and they always are, they're going to notice and they're gonna wonder why mommy or daddy isn't eating that. And it can, again, like I said, the way that you view sweets and the way you talk about sweets is gonna be their approach to sweets too. So, do you need to have a perfect relationship with food to help your kid have a healthy relationship with food and sweets? No, totally not. In fact, I think it's a beautiful thing to show your kids your journey, to show them that this is important to you. You value working on your relationship with food. You value all of these things, and you're working hard to improve that, and you're alongside them in this journey. That's really awesome. So no, you don't need to have a perfect relationship with food yourself. You don't need to have a healthy relationship with food to have your kids, help your kids develop one, but it is a lot harder. So I encourage you, if you're gonna start any place, to start there. Start with working on your own relationship with food. It's like the overused airplane mask analogy. You gotta put your own mask on before you can help somebody else. So that's where I encourage you to start with. And then piece of advice number 2 is this is a long game. I sometimes see people ask me on Instagram, or like friends and family or past clients have said, I'm doing all these things, Dr. Arnold, and it's not working. If you are watching this video or listening to this podcast and you have those exact thoughts in your head, I want you to know, this is a tough love moment, that every time somebody has said that to me, barring any children who had underlying behavior or medical issues that weren't addressed, every time someone has said this to me, they either haven't been implementing these strategies consistently, haven't been implementing them long enough, or they're not actually implementing the strategies. So maybe, they offer dessert regularly, but they only limit their kid to one piece of candy. Or maybe they offer dessert and they offer unlimited sweets when they serve it, but they themselves go on a diet all the time, and their kids see them trying to lose weight all the time and talking about, this is my guilty pleasure food, and having cheat days and treats, and that's bad, etc. So there's usually somewhere that we're missing something, or it hasn't been implemented long enough. So this is not something that you can do for a week and expect to have major changes. This is a long process, longer the older your child is and the more internalized these diet cultures of sweets and sugar are. So prepare yourself. It is a lot of work, or it takes a long time. It's not always a lot of work, but it takes a long time. It's a lot of like mental and emotional work, not like, physical work, but it's a lot of mental and emotional work. And it's a long game. It takes a while, but it is so worth it. I tell you, when your kid leaves part of their dessert on their plate and eats a bunch of veggies, it just feels so good. Every time, even still when it happens to me, it just feels so good that you can, like that, just because it's like a visual proof that your child has a neutral view of sweets and is working on or has already developed a healthy relationship with the food. It's just so validating when that happens. So when it happens, take a picture and tag me on Instagram, because I want to celebrate with you, because it will happen. Wins will come your way. So that's the end of this video for the quick guide, kind of quick, to helping your kids have a healthy relationship with sweets. I will be doing lots more videos like this or episodes on the podcast. My goal with this content is to provide parents with free content to anybody who wants this information. I will be releasing my free courses in January. So my signature course, which is Growing Intuitive Eaters 101, how to help your kids have a healthy relationship with food, ditch the sweet obsession, and eat more veggies. And then my starting solids for infants, those will be released completely 100% free in January. No upselling, no like marketing tactics with trying to sell you something inside the course. Like, it's seriously totally free, and it's because I care about you and I truly want to help as many parents as possible. And so in order to do that, I made it all free. So that will be released in January of 2022. So please, if you could help me by spreading the word, telling your friends and your family about this account, subscribing on my YouTube channel, subscribing to the podcast, reviewing the podcast helps a ton. So if you could take a moment to review that, it really makes a huge difference, because it bumps my podcast in the rankings and shows it to more people. So then we reach more parents to give them this information. Share this on your Instagram stories, you know, the whole 9 yards. Help me spread the word, because we're changing the world, and the more people we can reach, the better. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful to you. Please stay tuned for more. I'll see you later.